Introductions first. I'm Chuck Hinkle.
Patty Candich.
Scott Adler, Commissioner.
Marjorie.
Is it Marjorie?
Margie.
Oh, Margie. Okay.
Bill Attenborough.
Scott Sylvester.
Sue Peterson.
Chuck Weiser.
Becky Smith, sorry.
Elena Gagliano and a guest.
Mayor Daniel Reddish.
I'll get you on the-
Okay, approval of minutes. Does anybody have a problem with the minutes from last time?
I do.
Hi.
For some corrections, my name is Elena on that.
And on, what were you done?
Go ahead.
So, on that, where it says Scott Adler has left 4 messages with Dane, I did have a response. They called at least 6 times while we were during the meetings. I shut my phone off and I should have had it on, but they did call me back. I just want to make that a note. They definitely got a hold of me.
Any others?
I have one more thing to say about the minutes in general. I think there are guidelines on how the minutes should be taken. And it was an interesting, I think I have copies of it, but there are guidelines on how minutes should be taken. And there's also an interesting book on how to conduct a board meeting. The commissioners have it. It's also online. And it gives you an idea of exactly what's required of the minutes. And if we have an e-recording, which I'm doing, and I think Scott does it too sometimes when he turns his phone on, and Sue Peterson is also doing it. So in essence, it's a electronic recording. And I think just for discussion, maybe a motion, I don't know, that we decide that the electronic filing or the electronic record will be the official record of the minutes, and maybe just a written summary of the minutes. And that's what I was about to offer, and that's about it.
Do we go back, do we go back through and listen to the recording?
Well,
Do you do that as a, like where we go back and read the minutes we have, or do we listen so make sure, you know, like me, comments about Becky? I don't want that on there.
no, that won't be on
That
there.
was prior to the meeting, so you're.
That will be on there.
Recorded
There'll
already.
be, this is a public meeting now. Whatever's on it is going to be recorded. And there will be a place where anybody can look and
Yeah, I
listen
understand.
to
I'm
the
just saying
minutes.
before the 2 o'clock though.
No,
Okay.
just the public meeting. And as I said, the minutes will be, the electronic minutes, if we take a vote on it, would be the official minutes.
Do we have a motion?
Well, I'd like to say something too. I like Elena's idea. I'm such a klutz, I would certainly never depend upon me to have the minutes. I just wonder if this is under $30, if it'd be worthwhile for Becky to have one, you know, an official one, rather than depend on Elena and myself.
Well, I don't think Becky's gonna keep doing this.
Oh, okay.
Is she going to Lucillian?
No, that was Emily.
That was the other girl.
Am I speaking out there?
No, I'm just interim here.
Till it gets, well, we got lined out, we talked about this the other day, and then she just, we just kind of volunteered her to.
Right, she does get paid though. You do get paid though.
She gets compensated. yes,
Good.
she
Yeah,
does. She should.
good. Oh, definitely.
All right, sorry, go ahead.
Is there a motion to,
I motion that the electronically recorded minutes become the official minutes.
second?
Well, I'll second it, and then we're supposed to have a discussion after that, correct? I still think, rather than rely on Elena and myself, I think if we're gonna go that route, we should have one that stays with the secretary, who would be Elena or whoever. I don't know, maybe that's a crazy idea.
I'm pretty happy with the summary, which is what Becky's coming up with, is kind of a summary of what we discussed. And it would be, I mean, I'm sure nobody is suggesting that when we have our meeting, we actually listen or watch the whole previous meeting
No.
and then, approve or disapprove of that. I mean, that is what it is. And I think the idea behind having this summary of the minutes is that's the gist of what happened in the previous meeting. And then, I mean, the electronic record speaks for itself. That's what happened at the meeting. But this is what you approve or you correct or whatever. And I don't know what the definition of minutes is, but to me, minutes has always been something that was sort of summarized.
Mhm.
And so as far as the electronic record being the official minutes, but that's not something we're gonna go through. I'm not gonna listen to the previous meeting, I'm
Not
sorry.
either. No.
But I'd be, I think as far as this summary goes, and I think it's been pretty accurate, there's been a couple of corrections, a spelling correction, whatever. This is what you have in mind in a committee when you approve, you look at, this is, when I was chairman of the school board, that's what we did, we had a summary, and I think it's great that there's an electronic record. But as far as the whole minutes things goes, I think we'd be fine in calling this summary the minutes, and then we can correct it and approve it, or whatever. I don't know that the electronic record needs to be approved. I mean, it is what it is.
I agree, totally.
But the summary may have some minor errors, and it did. And we had a chance to correct it. Scott had his phone off. Your name was misspelled. Mine's misspelled in there too, and I don't care.
How'd they spell your name?
Well, not with two L's.
Oh,
So, but it's spelled correctly in some instances too. That's off the subject.
So I would also like to interject that there's a sign-in sheet, and if you print clearly, I can certainly make sure that everybody's names are spelled correctly.
Well, let's get this thing going around right now. So there's a motion on the floor, as we would say, and it's been seconded.
I don't know which one was second. Clarification, so that the minutes, the electronic minutes are not going to be the official minutes, is that what we're saying?
No, I think
Okay.
they will be, but we're just doing this summary so we can look at it and basically say, okay, it's pretty much okay.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry, but I was
We can have a
bringing,
note on there, go back and look at the electronic. I mean, if you have a,
There you go, Marge.
well, the point that I'm trying to make out is that you have the electronic recording, and it's there, and it's official. Yes, this is a summary, but if I recall, there was a conversation that Patty brought up about Agenda 21 and the UN, and that wasn't at all noted in the minutes.
but that
Or
would be, that
pertinent
would be
to a
in the
conversation that
recording.
was being had.
So
It was-
you decide what's pertinent to the conversation?
Well, if you would like, I can transcribe every single word said, absolutely.
I'm not saying that. Never mind. I was,
When I
do whatever you
Well, I think that's a good idea. I mean, have this as a summary and that as the official. And
Okay.
not guaranteeing this is gonna be 100% right. I mean, I couldn't,
And that, when I send the drafts of both of those, I ask for any corrections or updates that need to be added or subtracted. And if there's anything that you feel you want to have in there, that's when you should notify me that either A, my name is spelled wrong, or B, I would like that conversation.
Well, that's the whole idea of approving the minutes at a meeting like this. We bring up things.
Right.
I just want to bring up, there's this Montana Local Government Board Handbook, 2016. It's very good. It's from the MSU. All the boards supposedly in Granite County have a copy, and they tell you exactly what's required on the minutes and the information that's supposed to be taken. And that's all.
Where'd you get yours at?
I ordered it, but it's online,
Okay.
and we just found out about that
Maybe I
a
can
couple of
have-
weeks ago.
Well, I think it might be out of print now, unfortunately. I think it's
Now,
just
this is the
online.
current one.
Okay, because it is an excellent resource.
Maybe I'll have Mike get us some.
So where are we at here?
That would be great, Scott.
There's a motion on the floor and it's been seconded
To have this as an official.
to have the electronic record be the official minutes of our meeting.
We have a vote? I vote yes.
Aye.
Oh, yes.
Excuse me,
But that's only like 4 of us.
do you have a copy of minutes? Do you
Scott,
have a copy of the
no.
agenda?
Yeah, I'm a no.
Is there an extra copy? I forgot to bring mine. Is there another? Of what? Of the,
Because you're
the
kind of
minutes?
last
Over there.
Can you grab me one of those?
Cool, so what's the vote?
Thank you.
We usually just say, if you're gonna vote, say aye.
What's
I'm
that?
not opposed. I don't know if I can vote, right?
I don't know what I asked what your role here was, and I still haven't gotten an answer. So, I
Okay,
don't
let's do it
know.
again. Everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Or no, nay, whatever.
Whatever.
So the two noes.
So, the makeup of the committee, is Chuck on the committee?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
it was.
Well, wait a minute. You weren't here last
He
time.
wasn't here last time,
Yeah,
we
we
voted
voted
on 6
6.
people.
And there were 6 people, so I
And
He was,
don't think so.
And I had suggestions for people that, everybody wanted to hold it to 6, so my people could be on it.
Yeah, we held it down to 6 people, and I don't think you were on it.
Can okay, this, I know we're trying to go by this, the minutes and agenda, but I think there's a lot of wrinkles that should be ironed out about this group that haven't been answered. And I brought it up to the commissioners at a commissioners' meeting that there should be a resolution, a formal resolution regarding this group. And it's up to the commissioners to write that resolution. They should have been the ones who said how many would be on the board when we meet, all that information, if there was a budget, etc. So we wouldn't be going through this right now. We can
Why do you
change
make
things.
everything so damn complicated?
I'm sorry, Scott.
We sat up there and said we wanted to get this going, that was gonna work it out. It's nothing that's gonna tip over like today. I mean, we're still trying to figure this out.
Well, we have,
We keep
if,
coming up, want this, want that.
Let's
want
put it
that.
on the agenda for next time.
We'll make,
We gotta move
I'll
on.
get the commissioners to see if we can get a resolution. We didn't know. Didn't we tell you to bring something back to us? Didn't we say that?
we don't have any of the process down. Didn't you also say there would be a presence on the website that we would have, be in the heading? Didn't you not say that we would have all our records on there? I have no idea what the records are. I came in here looking for our records, they were behind the desk. Well, they weren't there. I had to look for them. This is not, I'm not wasting my time here for nothing. This is an this is an advisory group. This is a very important group regarding the management of the forest. It was a terrible 2017 with the fires, and I don't want to see a repeat. And this is not just window dressing to make some people happy that we've got a group.
let's put it on the agenda for the next time. We don't have time this time. Okay, review of the CRS report. Did anybody look at it?
I'm not gonna lie, I didn't look at it. I accidentally left it in my Kehoe's office.
Can I move this?
What does it look
Yeah,
like? I
sure.
don't know if I got one. Did I? Oh, is that the new stuff or?
I don't know where it came from, I read it.
I think.
It talks about, you know, the,
Did Alina, did you give us this a while back? It was the new stuff for our,
For a point of view and just for a point of reference, I handed it out. If there was any questions, there was contact
Yeah.
information on it.
you know, it describes, you know, the federal land management, who manages federal land.
yes.
Any comments on it?
No comment. On the agenda, where was that? That we were gonna bring it up.
No comments, and we'll move on to the next subject, which is the Sapphire Wilderness Study Area. Does anybody have any more comments on that?
I have several comments on the wilderness study area.
Okay.
First of all, for a little perspective here, I have a handout. And this is some information I got from the district out here, and everybody can have one of these, and it just gives you a little perspective. And this is distinct from management of the forest for timber. This is the motorized recreation standpoint here. And if you take a look at this handout, what they told me out there was the Beaverhead Deer Lodge National Forest, which the whole forest is a little outside our, we're mainly concerned with our one wilderness study area here. But there's more than 2 million acres in the BDNF. And then if you look at the handout, it says what is reserved for non-motorized access in the summer and in the winter. And it's a little different because they'll let you snowmobile some places that they won't let you take wheeled vehicles. And I just think it's interesting to see that the wilderness study area non-motorized portions are actually fairly small. There's 157,000 that's managed for non-motorized in the summer, and it says 43,000 that are managed for non-motorized in the winter. I'm not sure that's correct, but basically, out of the little more than 2 million acres, 1.5 million acres, it would appear from their figures, is managed for non-motorized. That seems like a pretty good chunk, okay? You've got 2 million acres and 1.5 is non-motorized. To refer back to the previous subject, which was that CRS report, if you look in there, and that's just a summary, it reminds us that the BLM, and more importantly, the Forest Service, is supposed to manage the forest for multiple use. And in my humble opinion, non-motorized basically means it's being managed as wilderness,
Yeah.
okay? And so,
Can you ride horses?
you
that'd be
can ride
non-
horses almost everywhere. You can't ride horses over by Butte up where the reservoir is. You can't even walk in there,
Oh.
okay? But non-motorized refers to, you know,
Motor.
things with throttles. And so that's a little perspective on how I think the Forest Service has gotten away from multiple use. And they've gotten a little pat on the butt from the Ninth Circuit Court of the United States, and they've gotten a little pat on the butt from the Alliance for the Wild Rockies and everything, and there's a lot of kumbaya, boy, isn't this great. But it's a startling statistic here if you see in the summer that 1.5 out of 2 million acres in our forest is managed non-motorized. And I think looking into the wilderness study area thing here, we can also, we can look at the broader, the broader forest. We're supposed to advise our commissioners as far as in our county for forest, and also specifically in our wilderness study area. But it seems to me that maybe the system has gotten a little off the mark. If I can be allowed to go on a little more, I have a couple more points.
Sure.
Okay. It's really interesting to take an older Forest Service travel plan map. It doesn't even have to be that old. If you take a travel plan map for our area from 2008, you will notice some interesting things. With regard to the wilderness study area, a good portion of it is open, especially on the road that's in there, okay? The road that's in the roadless. A good portion of it is open for wheeled summer motorized use. And basically the whole wilderness study area is open to snowmobile use, okay? If you look at the 2013 map, that has drastically changed. And if you go back before 2008, you'll see there has been this trend, okay, towards squeezing and squeezing and squeezing on motorized recreation. And it doesn't just involve the wilderness study area. If you go south of East Fork Reservoir, there is a place up in there called Dexter Basin, okay? Dexter Basin, on the 2008 Forest Service travel plan map, there's a road to a mine in there, and then the whole area of Dexter Basin is open to snowmobile use, okay? On the current map, about half of that acreage is now recommended wilderness, and without any direction from Congress, the Forest Service has decided that they will manage about half of that Dexter Basin acreage as wilderness, non-motorized, summer and winter, okay? Two interesting things about that. You may think of more. One is it's part of this trend that I'm talking about, where there is just more and more non-motorized area in our forest. The other interesting thing is it's not a wilderness study area.
Yeah.
It's just some Forest Service acres,
Exactly.
okay? And it's fairly wild up there, and the Forest Service has just decided that they will manage it as wilderness. The point I would make is there's been a steady drumbeat in the media about how Dane's bill cuts out the public from any kind of input, and it removes protection. Well, here's an interesting thing. In Dexter Basin, it had no wilderness study area protection, and now it's being managed as wilderness. It's actually tighter than the wilderness study area, because at least in our forest, they recommended that the road that goes in there, we would be able to travel on, okay? So here's an area with no wilderness study area protection, woo-hoo, and they are locking it up.
Did you ask more?
Well, no, you know, we haven't gotten to that
I'd
point.
like to pass this out, you'll explain why.
There are other,
I'd like to pass this out.
there are other areas
It will
down by
explain why.
Dillon where there are roads that go to lakes that have dams on them. That situation doesn't describe wilderness as far as I'm concerned. I can name names. There is a road down there in the Pioneers to Tendoy Lake. My father brought us in there in a Jeep when I was a kid. We were in there on snowmobiles and on motorcycles in the last 7 or 8 years. That road is now in a non-motorized restricted area. And I could name more places where these restrictions have been just enacted by the Forest Service because that's what they thought they should do. And don't think that there hasn't been a lot of collaborative input, okay? On the wilderness study area here and on the whole Rock Creek timbering moratorium back in the 70s, I mentioned this at the last meeting. There were meetings in Philipsburg. Hundreds of people showed up to express their dissatisfaction because the feeling was it might cost us our sawmills and therefore cost us our logging jobs and therefore cost us our people with children in school and therefore cost us our school. So there's been input since 1977 and lots of it, lots of collaboration. And so I don't buy this, and for every letter in favor of Dane's bill, there's 3 or 4 that get published, thank you very much, that are saying protections will be lost and there needs to be more public input. Well, there's been a tremendous amount of public input, and there will be more because our committee will advise the commissioners, and they've already had some public input as commissioners, which was, hey, let's get rid of this label and let's see if we can't get along little doggies here and move this process down the line. Okay, but there's a lot of lying in these letters about how somehow if the label of wilderness study area goes away, that some protections are going to be lost. That's why I brought up these other areas, and there's more of them, that are not in wilderness study areas, and the Forest Service is protecting them as if they were wilderness. Okay? Some of these, well, enough on that. Enough on that. This is worth taking a look at to get a perspective on how much is locked up.
The reason I brought up the United Nations, was it last time? Our Forest Service is not the Forest Service anymore. I'm going to pass these out. This is who we partner with.
It's a business call, and I apologize.
Everybody should see
And now I'm
it.
turning it off.
Okay.
Yes.
You can open that window.
I hope you keep these. I only had enough for 8 because I thought there were only going to be 6 here. But I'll have to keep this one here. But if you go down to number 6, well, these are all organizations of the United Nations that our Forest Service goes to. They work with FAO of the United Nations, and I can read this right here. Where did I do that? Okay, this comes off the home page of the United States Forest Service. This is who they partner with. The United States partners with FAO, that's Food Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, the World Bank, a UN program, the Center for International Forestry Research, the Nature Conservancy, World Life Fund, Ducks Unlimited, the Wildlife Conservation Society, and other environmental organizations. They're called NGOs, non-government organizations. Our Forest Service is run by environmentalists and the United Nations. And believe me, they do not want us managing these forests or logging them. But you can look on any one of those, and that's why our Forest Service has changed. They're biologists. What I think would really be nice for our Forest Service, if we just go back to the old Forest Service ranger, the ones that took a 4-year degree in it, how to manage the forests. But it's not like that anymore. They had a motto, do no harm to the forest. But any of these, and I'll show you these other organizations too, and like this one that we're going to talk about today also partners with the UN. I mean, it's all FAO. Food Agriculture Organization. But that's why the Forest Service is doing what they're doing. It's not us anymore. It's United Nations, it's environmentalists, it's infiltrated with that, and it's too bad. That's all I have to say.
Well,
But I'd like you to keep this though, because I got some other things to show on this.
and I have to respectfully disagree with my new friend Patty.
Okay, go ahead.
I believe this is conspiracy, and this, which seems to be so popular these days.
Sue, this is on a USD Forest Service website. I took it right off of that.
But I don't see the harm, like the Girl Scouts, well, everybody knows the Girl Scouts are evil, but,
They're going to the Boy Scouts.
yeah.
I think that's why though, because the Boy Scouts are strong, you know, they're American, where the Girl Scouts are becoming feminist, you know.
That's
That is even beyond me, but, yeah, I just disagree with all this stuff, and I also disagree with what Bill said. I mean, there are lies, damn lies, and statistics. I have something right here that says, if every remaining acre of roadless country south of Canada became part of the wilderness preservation system, we still wouldn't come close to balance. The pitiful 1% might climb to 3%. So, you know, we need to hear all sides of the story.
You got copies of that?
I don't, but I can,
Well, that's why you're here.
well, thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
I can make copies of,
I can get a copy, I can keep.
that'd be terrific, thank you. Thank you, Scott.
Any more comments?
You missed it, Bill, I was just explaining why the UN has, or the United States Forest Service has changed.
Did you have one for Bill?
Did you get it, Bill?
Because Bill was.
Yeah, I did. I got it.
Okay.
But this,
got it.
are you sure you got this?
I got
one?
it.
And I did read, you were gone, that we partner with FAO of the United Nations, Food Agriculture Organization.
And the Girl Scouts.
Well, that's beyond my pay grade, that.
Well, it's there, that's.
Right,
that's
right,
the
I'm
truth.
not saying it's not. So, you know, in the course of advising the commissioners here, we will probably try to come to some consensus as far as how much wilderness do we need here in Granite County. I'm guessing that's part of the deal. And I really enjoy the Pentler, as I've mentioned before. What I object to is areas that have been open for motorized use since the 60s, I don't think should be closed at this point. And one of those areas is in the Sapphire Wilderness Study Area. So
Which part is that on it?
the Sleeping Child Fire Road that goes back towards, it goes
Is that the one
from-
that takes off by the pass there?
It takes off from Miller's Mine and it goes back towards Chain Lakes, okay? And our forest actually recognized that that was a historically motorized corridor there, and even though it was in the wilderness study area, they said it was open for some motorized use. The Bitterroot National Forest sort of shares that road, and they decided that because it was wilderness study area, even though traditionally it had been used for motorized use, they would lock motorized users out of there. What I heard at one of our previous meetings was that the Beaverhead Deer Lodge Forest is being sued because they left the traditional use alone, and the Bitterroot National Forest is being sued because they took away the traditional access. So both forests are being sued, they made opposite conclusions. Okay, part of our problem is too much court input. And I think this committee, for instance, can advise the commissioners in a much wiser fashion than the Ninth Circuit Court of the US of A. So, traditional motorized use, I would personally like to see remain. As far as punching new roads in for my motorbike, I'm not particularly in favor of that. There you go.
There we go, and we got that on tape, so.
Do we wanna make a motion on that, or no, I mean,
Yeah, we're done.
continue this
We're done.
discussion later.
And I'd like to have someone from the Forest Service come and speak to why they closed them. I mean, I think that'd be
Oops,
interesting.
sorry, Becky.
Okay, we
Thank you.
can get some, I'm really talking a lot, and I apologize.
Will you give this?
I have spoken to Cameron Razor, he's the ranger out here, okay?
Scott,
Right.
And I asked him if he was planning on coming to any of these meetings. Here's an interesting thing. There is a larger advisory group that advises on the whole Beaverhead Deer Lodge National Forest. And they either meet in Anaconda or Butte. They meet on the exact same day of the month that our committee meets.
What do they call it?
I don't know that.
It's the Beaverhead Deer Lodge Advisory Committee, and Maureen Connor is there, and,
Okay, well, Cameron has been going to those meetings, so he said it's tough for me to be in two places at the same time. So maybe we should check to see if he can either send somebody here, or maybe we could try a different day next month and see if Cameron would come by and answer some questions.
yeah, let's try a different day. Maybe we could even do it on a Tuesday when Scott's here anyway, you know, if they would get done at 2 or 3.
While I'm on the subject of Cameron,
Other county
just gonna
stuff.
click.
this is a segue into forest management. The trails guy out here at the district, his name is Will Shoutis. He's pretty good. He puts on avalanche seminars in the winter, and he knows what he's doing. Will noticed, just like we all have, that there was a tremendous amount of fire activity this last summer, and that there was going to be a huge amount of blowdowns on the trails that the Forest Service maintains. Okay. Will suggested to his supervisor, which is Cam, the ranger, that for a limited period of time, they be allowed on the trails in the Anaconda Pentler to use chainsaws to clear the blowdown.
Oh, no, really? That's dangerous.
Or something efficient?
Cameron,
I say they have to use the cross saw.
well,
Yeah, they can't be
Just-
mechanized in wilderness, and
just-
everybody knows that.
just let,
Yeah, but
okay,
that's a stupidity.
okay.
Well, I
As
don't
it,
know if that is stupid,
Okay.
though. I mean, they have.
As
well,
it
that's
turns-
your
Well, they should-
opinion. That's
Okay,
your
let
opinion.
Bill
If
finish.
it's wilderness, it shouldn't.
sure, okay.
Yeah.
Shouldn't
As it
clear
turns
trees
out,
for-
many of the trails in our wilderness here were put in with a thing, it was a mechanized, a motor-powered wheelbarrow, drilling and blasting in the wilderness. Thank you very much. There are all kinds of exceptions, okay, to the motorized use in the wilderness concept, okay, including if they're fighting fire, sometimes they can use chainsaws, sometimes if there's an emergency, they can land a helicopter there, and on and on and on. So, what the trail guy wanted was an exception for a week or two, okay, to get in there with a crew, save a bunch of money, and clear out the blowdown. A little background, I asked Pinky Ike, who was there in the 60s when it first became wilderness, how did you handle motorized use in the wilderness? He said, here's how we handled it. If there was a big blowdown, or if there was new construction, we used power tools. If it was regular maintenance, we used the, what do they call it, the misery whip, the crosscut saw. Okay, and he said, we did that for 10 years or so, and then the word came down, no, it's all gotta be, you know. So Cameron Razor, the ranger, he said, I like that idea, we'll save some money. We'll get the trails cleared in a hurry. It's a good idea. He took it to his supervisor, which is down in Dillon. Cameron's supervisor said, I like that idea. And by the way, the region recently passed a rule where any motorized exceptions would go to the regional forester, and the forester would make the decision. So she, I believe, said, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna save the taxpayers some money. It's gonna be a very brief racket in there, and then those trails will be open for everyone to use, instead of, a lot of them will be closed for several years, I'm sure. Well, it got bucked down to Missoula, down to the northern region. All of the forest supervisors there, except one, thought it was a good idea to get in there, get the trails ready for the public at minimal expense, make that exception. But the word that came back down was, no, there's going to be no exception, because one of those foresters objected. Okay, I think that's wrong myself. I think that's wrong. I'm going to send my buddy Dave Zinke an email, and I'm going to ask Dave to talk to his nephew and see if his nephew ever has lunch with Sonny Perdue. Sonny Perdue is the head of the Forest Service, Secretary of Agriculture. And if so, maybe Sonny would call up and talk some common sense into these people. Now, there's a low chance of that being
Very
effective,
low.
but that's what I'm gonna do about that.
Good.
I'd still, since the group seems big, I would still offer to excuse myself
No.
from this group.
You can't,
I don't think you're.
impossible.
Thank you.
All right,
I can want that.
I'm tired of hearing this.
Any other discussion on Sapphire Wilderness? Okay, I guess we're gonna move on to air quality. And everybody knows that's a big thing.
Yeah,
And I didn't make copies for everybody of a letter. I got one copy.
okay, I'll look. You wanna go next one, or want me to you?
But anyway, I wrote a letter to Sonny Perdue about the fires. Sonny Perdue.
So I'm not the first person to have that idea.
No, that's fine. And Sonny Perdue gave it to the chief of the Forest Service, the guy that quit. Okay, but he gave it to the head of fire and aviation in DC. Okay, she wrote me a letter back. She wrote me 2 letters back. And it's kind of funny that the first letter is a little longer, the second one, I don't understand. I just got this one like last week. And the first one says basically that they, in 2009, guidance for implementation of the federal wildland fire management policy was revised to provide agency administrators with more flexibility to ensure safe and effective wildfire response. Okay, so what they're saying is, in 2009, and I thought something was a little bit different than when I was fighting fire. I mean, it was getting bad, but it wasn't this bad. Anyway, so they changed in 2009 to let these fires burn unless, if they want to, unless they're gonna threaten the town or whatever. Our Montana Constitution, in Article 2, Section 3, says that we have the right for a safe environment. Okay?
Clean air.
And
Well,
clean-
they're,
a clean and safe environment,
right,
okay? How can these people, without doing a NEPA document, and in Montana, it's a MEPA document, Montana, okay? And it's a very good document, actually, for some things in MEPA and NEPA. But anyway, how can our state agencies allow this smoke to be coming over? Because they said that they are doing this on purpose. They are letting these fires burn, and they are lighting more in the burnout operations. They don't go direct like we used to. Direct means you're going right along the edge of the fire. Okay, they are going indirect, and they're jumping back to roads, or they make contingency lines
There's one right there.
with the feller bunches. And then they're lighting off, thousands of acres in between the line and the fire. Okay, you'll see a letter to the editor, just a little side note, I wrote a letter to the editor, it's coming out in the Philipsburg Mail, it deals with this. I sent it to the Missoulian, they called me up 2 days ago, said we're not gonna print. And I said, why not? And they said, because you're repeating yourselves. You wrote another letter that said similar to that in January. How many people will they go back and read January's letter? Huh?
No,
I must have hit a nerve someplace. Anyway, so I said, she said, you're repeating yourself. I said, well, other people repeat themselves all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, like this wilderness study stuff. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
So, and anyway, so we got to talk. Anyway, I said, I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing it for the young people and people like you. And then she goes, well, I got kids, and I don't like to smoke either.
What do you mean?
Anyway, so my whole point is that is the state agency allowing these fires to burn when they could be put out when they're small? If you went in there and aggressively attacked that fire, all these fires down here last summer could have been put out when they were small. They let them burn for 2 weeks. Okay, and then they blew up. And now what they're doing is they are setting us up for another one.
Oh, no.
Yeah, you see in the news where they're coming out and saying that,
Worse.
yeah, it's gonna be another bad fire season. So that was my letter was, sure it's gonna be another, you can guarantee it's gonna be another bad fire season when you don't put out the lightning strikes in June.
Yeah.
And you just let them burn for 4th of July, they're gonna take off most likely in July, August, and September. So you will have another
That'd
bad
be
fire.
terrible. That's true, Chuck. I was talking to Kevin Nijis. He bought Ann Sanders Ranch. He was sitting at his desk. He saw the lightning strike out there. He called the Forest Service right away. They said, sorry, we can't put it out. That's what they told him.
Yeah, well, I was
And he
sitting
saw
there.
it flame, and then he called, and they wouldn't do nothing about it.
Yeah. No, they admitted it right here.
Yeah.
So why don't we do something about
Well-
getting our state DEQ to,
Who's in charge of our forest, really? That's what you gotta know, and that's what the problem is.
I don't disagree.
The Girl Scouts.
Do you have a
It's just
comment
the
on that?
Scots.
Do you like the smoke?
I was
mean,
surprised
I don't like the smoke either.
Yeah.
And if you're, I don't like the smoke either. But I also know we could cut every single tree in Montana and we'd still have fires. Where is the biggest fire in Montana last year? Lewistown. Lewistown was the biggest fire in Montana. They don't have trees around there, some, but not all. It was very devastating. Where's the biggest fire so far in 2018? That was Oklahoma.
Well, yeah, that's
200-300
brush and grass. I
Right.
mean,
Okay, if you cut every single tree in Montana, which nobody is advocating, with succession, then brush is gonna come in, right?
Yes.
And that's more flammable
Yeah.
than trees. So I'm just saying,
But
God
we
is-
could put these fires out before they get catastrophic.
Yeah, you could put these fires out. I guarantee you could put
We'll
those
always have
fires,
fires.
those fires out. You read in NC-Web, when they started, and I'm not the only one seeing this. When we talked down there in Drummond,
Right.
the
right,
one guy,
yeah.
he come up to me and says, I can't figure out what they're doing. He said, I read NC-Web all the time, and the fires are just going and going, and they're not doing anything to them.
We have ranchers call us to go put the fires out, because they know if they call the Forest Service, they just let it go. So we've done it on BLM land, and I shouldn't say that, but we have. Because our equipment was right above it, number one, the ranch at Rock Creek.
So who puts the fires out on BLM?
BLM has their own stuff. but
Oh,
then
okay.
If it gets into a heavier, or if they let it get to a heavier, then they start calling in they have teams.
Okay.
Okay, and then that's when they go out on the sites and start getting people coming and going, but you
Okay.
have to pre-register and everything, so you have to.
But the
Right,
state
okay.
puts fires out. They take care of our forests beautifully, and
The
they make lots of money on the
DNRC.
logging. Yeah, the state,
DNRC,
right,
yes.
Right,
yeah.
right,
Yeah, they're really good.
Yeah,
Right,
they're very
that's what
good.
we
They
always
manage our
call
forests
for-
very good.
yeah.
Well, BLM always say they don't have the money and that, so they can't do nothing, but yeah,
Yeah.
you know, you see all these fancy fire trucks.
We're done
and
talking,
that,
I'll
they're
pass
always
this
going
out.
somewhere else.
Oh, okay.
It's just what you were talking about. I got it out of Range Magazine.
Oh, right, I gotcha.
About the fire, or the rain.
What, the people across the pond think of
Right.
our
Protect our own.
wasting of our forest. It's
Right,
very
so
good.
Really?
If
Oh, it's
they need
really good.
help,
I'll
they
get
want
you
help.
Yeah,
But
so
right
good.
now, I think we should keep our own stuff.
Chuck?
It's like they told the Indians, you know, now they're all fighting over, the Indians had to go buy their own helicopter.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
it's kind of a big, yeah.
Did I miss it, or haven't we heard yet? Has there been a report from Daines's people as far as where his bill is sitting and how that's going?
Well, I made a comment just before the meeting, I had a lunch with them, and it's still just sitting there, it's nothing really going on yet, which is good for us, because then it's gonna give us time to get out and look and see where, there's gonna be areas I feel that should be in, and areas that shouldn't be, you know, and I think that's pretty much where it's sitting now, and they're here today, but they cannot speak, or they can't talk, I mean,
So there are representatives from Danes and
This talks
Yukon.
about
Yeah,
pollution.
they can't say
About the
nothing.
pollution that we're
Really?
creating worldwide.
yeah.
I will.
Maybe they can tweet.
I'll try to bring this up.
Right? Did I say that right?
You've
But-
given permission to speak on record.
You don't
I got
have permission to speak on
pass
record.
this around.
They
Okay.
can't, yeah.
Okay, I'd like to pass this around too. It's what the people across the pond think of our environmentalists and our forest policies, the pollution we cause. But it has a whole much more about it, about cattle with methane gas. But there's good news, I guess they actually help the pollution, and it's just really good reading. And they can't believe how much waste the forests that are burning up. You know, they see the wealth in it, and well, I'll just take one.
Yeah, that's our wealth.
You want the purple?
Yeah.
You know, the nation's wealth is,
Okay, yeah, but.
Well, I had some foreign exchange students from
This-
Germany that were just.
This is what they
amazed.
said. Do you know the estimates of unused logging residue and dead wood rotting in your country are equivalent to 32 billion barrels of oil? I mean, they can't believe how we're wasting our natural resources and polluting the world. It's terrible.
well, the French, they'd be rioting.
I need one.
They would riot over this, what this
Oh,
was done. I know they would.
Yeah, they,
Okay, I have to say, none of this is factual, so let's just deal with.
I got
that.
this out of Range Magazine. I know the
Okay, this is
editor.
factual.
This
I was on a
is.
tour of France,
Yes,
and there was a blowdown, there's probably no more than 1,000 acres
right,
in southwestern France.
okay.
And the tour guide said that it's a pine, it's a maritime pine, and it goes like our pine, it goes real quick. Anyway, so the government screwed around and didn't put it up for sale, and people were mad, over 1,000 acres.
Just, oh my God. Yeah, they just can't believe.
Well,
what's
they don't
happening
have
there.
the public land that we have in Europe.
No, they haven't managed is what they haven't, 'cause I had a couple of foreign exchange students and they just, Germany exports a lot of timber.
Oh,
You know that?
Mhm.
yeah.
And they don't have any of this stuff that we have, and they export a ton of timber, and they're a very efficient system for managing
And
their
they're
forest.
sustainable. They have it always
Yeah,
growing, new stuff coming.
and we do just exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
We ignore it.
Now, this is
Yeah.
out of Range Magazine. I know the editor, CJ Hadley. It is the truth. So,
Well,
What other
that's
nation,
backpack
I put this,
applications in northern, the Rockies, you
Yeah.
know, this is like,
yeah.
I put this in the letter.
It's written.
What other nation or civilization has wasted its natural resources like we do and survived? None. They're all too smart to waste the natural resources like that.
I don't think we're wasting our natural resources.
You don't think burning them up and letting them fall down and,
I think some things are beyond our control, and as far as the Forest Service not getting out on fires, you know, I have no reason not to believe you on that. But I just don't know. I just think there's, beyond money, there's also great wealth in our natural resources, and tourism is the second largest business in Montana, and I think, you know, next to agriculture, and that has to be acknowledged also.
Pretty soon they'll be able to tourism run name those towns.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's sad.
it is sad, but that's,
But the fires are gonna, it has hurt, like Montana did better than ever last year in tourism, I looked at that. But they still figured they could have got 240 million more.
right,
You know.
I know, I hate it too, I hate it too, but I also think you have to acknowledge global warming. Until we acknowledge that the climate has changed, I mean, we have to acknowledge everything.
But with global warming, wouldn't you think they'd have more initial attack? Because it would burn a little faster, so they would think, well, we can go in there. But part of this letter, for example, part of a wildlife or wildfire that is threatening a community may be fully suppressed, while another part that is reducing fuels that could contribute to a severe wildfire in the future would be left burned. So what are they doing? It's already a bad wildfire. So, I mean, it's burning up. Improving wildlife habitat or achieving other natural resource management objectives. So basically for wildlife habitat, we get to breathe smoke for 2 months, 2 or 3 months in the summer.
Hey, Chuck, if I have to go, I got some flooding going on, I can stay till 3, so if you guys care if I go then?
Yeah, no, you can go.
Okay.
No, you could go now.
Yeah.
Is your house in danger or something?
I'm not
or-
in charge,
So
so.
we got roads, another roads is, they're letting more
Oh, this
water.
is county stuff?
Yeah,
Oh.
they let more water out and
Oh.
it's
Out of Georgetown.
have to.
What's the
And
CFS?
then they let some more out of Willow Creek, I understand.
Oh, okay.
And Mason's house and that's flowed all the way around, one road washed out, I'm getting messages, so
Sure,
I
you
said
will.
I'd stay here till 3 and then I'll head out.
Okay,
Is that right?
okay.
Thank
I
you.
don't know how long you got, what do you do, what you give me then?
No, I'm just thinking about my other job as far as who's
Well, you can go.
in danger and if there's other ways out.
Oh, yeah,
Is there
yeah.
evacuations happening?
I can talk to you out here, these guys keep going, if you wanna come out here.
I have to keep minutes.
She's keeping them on that video thing.
You can look at the video and
I mean, I'm
just do the
saying,
summary.
I know you
from
got
home.
that, and that you
Yeah.
should be notified, so.
I'm gonna bring this up now, and we can add some others on, but I wanna make a suggestion that we have the Sapphire Wilderness Study Area on every agenda until we take it off.
Are you guys leaving?
We have another meeting we have to go to, but my contact info's there, so.
I want to say I would encourage both of your bosses to have public meetings, you know. None of them are willing to have town halls, and I think that their constituents would appreciate that.
On the other hand, when your guy was down at Sportland, they're just trying to check in with the business that makes their money by selling motorized vehicles for use in the forest and other places. There was a guy from, it was like the Montana Wildlife Federation or something. And he had his phone camera right up in Dane's face.
Oh.
And he was just like this, and when somebody else would try to talk to him, he'd get around and he'd stick it in there
Oh,
again.
my goodness.
And I think he was looking for, excuse me, I think he was trying to provoke a Gianforte moment.
Yeah, he
And when I
was.
watched this in action, I had a little more sympathy for Greg Gianforte and how he
His incident,
lost
yeah.
his temper, because
I would have done
this
the same
guy
thing.
was trying to push Steve Dane's buttons. He was pushing hard.
How'd he do?
I thought it was disgusting, and Steve just smiled and tried to answer some questions of other people, but it was obvious to me what was going on there. I thought it was bush
They
league.
shouldn't be able to come so many feet of a US senator, I would think, you know.
Anyway, there you
Yeah,
go,
thank
you
for
can pass
coming.
that back.
Thank you.
If I might, at the second year, I have a 3:15 appointment, also a meeting.
Okay.
I want to get some background and I'll do my homework. I'll check out the minutes. I'll get Senator Dane's bill, see where it's sitting. It's sitting in committee, see how many co-signers there are on it. And I'll do all my background homework on it and I'll get up to speed. And just one other note, I spent 38 years working in the forest, so I know on the ground how it works. I have a lot of practical experience with it. I was encouraged to see this committee put together, just by reading it in the paper, which is how I found out about it. So I will probably check back in with you folks. Do you have a sitting chairman, is my one question.
Right there.
Right here, Chuck.
Chuck, okay. So
Yeah.
he
Do you
would be a
guys,
contact person.
excuse me, do
Okay.
you guys know who he is?
He's our mayor.
Yeah.
That's right, Dan Radish.
So
Here,
Carry on.
yeah, I have.
Okay.
I'll pass that over.
Thank you.
Thank you for
And you
coming.
guys are the second Wednesday?
I'll do that.
Oh,
So I'm gonna pass it.
Yeah.
Until it's changed.
That's for you. Oh, I mean, I know you have to go, and I wanted to talk about this is
I
better
just
than the
got-
agenda.
Give you a little up, I know this has nothing to do with this, but water flow has kind of come up about 30%, so
Wow.
people that
Our bridge isn't looking too good at my house. It's come over an island that supports our bridges. Never done that before. so-
yeah, and there's still 100 and some % snow.
Oh.
So can you get home, Patty?
Yeah, yeah, but if it gets any higher,
I know,
it's gonna
but,
be bad.
You can stay in town with your kid.
Yeah.
It'll be an adventure.
He'd love that. He almost-
Okay, we gotta move on.
Yeah, sorry about that, I hate to leave you, but if there's any questions, you guys can call, and I'll make sure and get with that resolution, Elena.
And maybe put something on the agenda with the county commissioners and give them a report, and Chuck could be there, whatever.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'll just wait to hear from Chuck and get the review of everything, and then we'll go from there, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Okay?
Well, we'll see.
Okay, as I was saying, I'd like to put the Sapphire Wilderness Study area on every meeting till we take it off. Air quality, because you can't talk about everything in one meeting and come to a conclusion, I don't think. And then, if you have, another one would be NEPA and MEPA, to talk about those as relating to the fires and forest management. Did you have something,
No, that's fine.
Patty? Did you have something you wanted
No,
on?
no, I did. I just
Not,
wanted
not jobs or anything like that, or
jobs like what?
forest jobs?
We'd like that. We'd like more forest jobs, yeah.
So how much money do the local contractors make off the fires? Does your family work the fires in the
Oh,
summer?
we did really well. Better than any logging we could ever do.
So there is
Absolutely.
there's a flip side to the
But
fires.
we would rather make less money and see our forests and our mills stay solid.
Right,
Because
right.
if they burn up all the trees, we're out of here, so.
Yeah, right,
And,
but
and
there
see,
is a
this is what I
flip
think their
side.
game plan is. I could go 10 years ago on environmental websites. The main theme was destroy industry, and rural communities. Because it's all about sustainable development, smart growth. They want to get people off the green and into cities. That's President's Council on Sustainable Development, Agenda 21. Now we're into Agenda 2030. That's even worse. But there is a reason they don't let us have the dead trees. They want those mills to go broke. There used to be like 700 sawmills in Montana, now we're down to about 5. And 400 sawmills from the west coast over to Montana have gone down. Most of the mills in California have gone down because of the Endangered Species Act, and they just hammer these mills, and they're gone. You know, and it's sad because now California, Jerry Brown's declaring California a disaster area. He says we have to build 30 sawmills. They have all these dead trees down there. I mean, they're big, these trees. It's nothing we could log. We're not used to that type of stuff. But they're logging it, leaving it on the highway. They have no place to put them. It's just it's a disaster. And then the mudslides are going to be really bad. So forests need management. I'll stress that and stress that. It's a harvest. It's like a harvest, grain field. There's a time to plant and a time to harvest. But
You're not advocating harvesting like in the wilderness area,
No.
right?
No.
Like
If
in,
it's all-
like in the Anaconda Pindler?
This is what I don't like about wilderness. Everyone thinks it's free, but this guy, I got on a report on him today, it's anything but free. It's humanly regulated. It's no longer free.
Right, but
I
my
think-
question was, you're not advocating logging in the wilderness.
If the trees were dead and you could get in there, remove the dead trees to save a beautiful forest, yeah, I would. I would be
And
advocating.
national parks,
Yeah, I would even do it in
rainforests,
national,
rainforests.
I'm not, like thinning it, getting diseased trees out to save what's there,
Well, I would say I disagree with you there.
That's
I-
all right.
I think.
See, I don't like wilderness designation, because these lands belong to me,
I-
and to you, and what you guys wanna do.
I
with
Well,
it.
I
kinda
want
like
mine
our-
to be free.
I kinda
Thank
like
you
our
very
one.
much.
Well, anyway.
Yeah.
All right, now, let's move on.
Yeah.
So anyway, anybody have any objections to having those on the agenda?
No, I would like to see them on too, because there's a lot of things we can bring to the table on it,
Does
continue.
everybody agree?
I agree, yes.
Okay, review of page 12, and I pretty much talked about air quality on page 12. Did anybody review it anyway?
I read it.
Yeah.
Any comments? The point I wanted to make was, if you had a prescribed burn, you would have to have a NEPA document done on that. And by doing a NEPA document,
Is that like an environmental impact statement kind of?
yeah,
on that?
EIS, or the short version, EA.
Yeah.
And then it has to go public, and then we could comment on that. So if they planned on to burn the east side of Emerine or something, and they said, well, okay, we're gonna let that burn. And then people
did.
could say, that smoke's gonna come right into us, and we're, gonna, you know.
Okay, that's something we really need to get to know about, isn't it, our rights?
Yeah,
Clean air.
exactly. But
Yeah.
that's why I said before in another
Get
meeting,
all of it.
that they're using the lightning strike as a natural ignition for a prescribed burn.
Oh,
To
I
get away
see.
from NEPA.
Oh, that's how they do
So
that.
we have no
Okay.
say, you see.
Okay, it wasn't a prescribed burn, was it? It was just let it burn, what the lightning did.
So
Yeah,
nobody
see.
collects air quality measurements on the, you know, the smoke when it's a natural cause, is that what you're saying? Like nobody's studying the air quality during
Excuse
measurement?
The DEQ is monitoring, but not right here, I don't think.
A lady in Missoula does that. I just printed that out. Boy, it was bad last summer too.
Yeah.
She's the air quality lady in Montana.
And Sealy Lake was way above, it was like twice what this, and this is hazardous, and it says serious aggravation of heart and lung disease, premature mortality in persons with cardiopulmonary disease, and the elderly. You know, I'm getting into this category. Serious risk of respiratory effects in the general population.
Yeah.
And Sealy was like twice, I don't quote me on that.
It was. I
Way
saw
above
it.
this.
It was
And
terrible.
I'm sure that we were way above that at my place anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for several days. And so basically what they're saying, well, you stay in the house, or you leave. In fact, one of the experts said that last fall. They had a symposium, and the expert said, we're gonna burn more, and if you don't like it, leave. Well, this is federal government, finance that.
It's not our old
I've
Forest Service.
never heard that myself, but
No.
Anyway, so we'll leave that open. Did you wanna?
oh yeah, if we're ready for item number 5. It's Montana Forest Collaboration Network.
We gotta go 4 first.
Oh.
4, it'll be real simple. I was just gonna hand out the coordination booklets, and I'm sorry, I just made 5. You can look at it, and we can have it, discussion. You hear a lot, it's collaboration. It's not collaboration, it's coordination, and there's a big difference between the two. So,
So we get a copy.
I printed this out, Sue. Principles of your that ordeal, so you can look at them. See what the principles are.
if anybody's missing, I can make it for next week or
Counter and clock.
whatever.
Yes.
What was that?
If anyone's missing,
Oh, okay.
I just made 5, that's all I did.
Oh, this, right, that I got.
If you, do you have a file copy of that, electronic file copy of that?
No,
Let me
not
see, does
really.
she want one of those now?
I-
You got one of these? Oh.
Well, we can give you a copy, you can make one now. It'll just come right out.
So, is that it on that?
Yeah, that's about it.
Oh, it's,
Sue?
okay, so, the Montana Forest Collaboration Network, if we take a minute, everybody could just read through this real fast.
Oh, that's what it was.
It's by Gordy Sanders, who I think runs Pyramid,
Pyramid
Bill.
Sorry.
We haul into him, Pyramid.
Okay.
Becky, I can drop you off one
Okay,
before next. Okay.
yeah.
Sure. And he's from Pyramid, is he?
Right, he runs Pyramid.
So,
So, there are 22 collaborative groups. I don't think Danes and Jim Forte consulted with any of those collaborative groups, and I know that the Beerhead Deer Lodge one, Chris Marchand is, your friend Chris, is also on that group.
We go way back.
Yeah,
He's our
he said-
cousin.
Right,
Did
he
you know
said
that?
yeah. And Marine, and you have all these different groups, and I just wondered if maybe if you wouldn't mind, I would look into how maybe our group could join the Montana Forest Collaborative Network, but at least look into it. Would you guys be interested in that?
we could look into it.
I think it
Yeah.
sounds like a great idea.
I mean, it looks like they have a lot of resources, because we have different opinions here, and it was emphasized to us with the commissioners, they want us to collaborate.
I'd like to see her report put on the agenda for next month.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be happy
Can I
to.
say something? I don't like this organization. If you look at the principles, they're not for logging, for letting it burn. And I don't like that.
Well, Gordy Sanders, though, I mean, the timber industry is heavily involved in the Montana Forest collaboration.
So you're
Yeah.
suggesting we join the group?
Look
Maybe we
She's-
into it and see if it's
She's going to
something.
report to us.
This would
and
be a
then
better organization to join.
we can
This is
find out.
Montana Forest Stewardship Foundation. That organization is in there. Montana Forest Owners Association, Montana Logging Association. Everybody's in this one. This one would be a better one to
Are
join.
the conservation groups in there too?
Let me see, which one would they be? There's Montana Tree Farm, Montana Wood Products, Northwest Management, University of Montana,
Well,
Forestry
but Patty,
Conservation.
that's not really fair until you listen to what this one has to offer. This one it's gonna take in more voices, and I think that's what we need. We need the timber voices, but we also need recreation, we need hunting,
Yeah,
because they belong to everybody.
I think we should check it out. I don't know,
I
I wouldn't say.
I'd like to hear her report next month.
It would be totally unbiased.
Okay, now I will tell you, that's a UN program again. It comes from the United Nations Collaborative Partnership on Forests. They're all locked into it. The United Nations comes out with this collaborative deal, then he sends it out to all over the world, and each organization makes up their collaborative forest. That's why we're so locked in
Okay,
our forests.
could we put on an agenda, Sue? doing
Yeah, go
one,
ahead.
And then, and you doing one?
Right.
And so,
We
but
may
no,
not
no
decide
fighting,
to
no
join.
fighting, just,
Right,
Right,
right.
I'd like to hear more about it.
Well, I mean, 22 in Montana, and they get things done. We want to get things done. We don't want to just fight all the time.
But most of the people behind that are all environmentalists.
Like Gordy Parks and Charlie, like
I'm
Gordy
not, no,
Sanders and
I
Charlie
have,
Parks.
I have their partnership, I don't like environmentalists, you can tell I don't, because I know who they work with.
I am an environmentalist.
I'm an environmentalist
Right.
too.
Not
In a
like
way.
UN environmentalist, sorry.
basically, we
Are you?
all are.
Are you UN?
I'm not with the UN, but I mean, I don't know why that keeps coming up here.
Because most people,
You're with
Because
the
they're the
league,
driving force of what's
That's a good
happening in
place to
this
be from.
country.
oh my
That's why.
God, it's terrible. Let me see, where is that? I can't find it, but it was a deal that had all the partnerships, you know, of who,
What could we put on the agenda?
I'll bring that next time.
20 minutes for Sue, 20 minutes for Patty. Next time. Anybody agree to that?
You know,
I
I
think you
like
can make
it,
that
I like
happen all
what
by
they do,
yourself.
Sue, I really do. I love how these young people are excited, you know, saving the forest and all that. But I don't like who starts it, the UN.
Well,
And once you guys realize that's the truth, you be
But-
concerned, and that worries me, you know.
Well, yeah, I worry a little bit about you too. I mean, what you're saying is just simply not true. It's
And
what
you-
Sean Hannity and Rush Limbaugh, and they're always pushing all this stuff. It's a threat to democracy. We gotta face the facts here.
Yeah. What part do you think isn't true? I'm
Anything about the United Nations and this, trying to take our water, trying to take our land.
Okay, you know, a good thing for all of you to do in Idaho, they're having a terrible time with the United Nations down there. Because Idaho is 87% owned by the government. And there are so many land issues. I want you guys all to Google Idahoans against Agenda 21. You'll see all the problems they are having with wilderness. Write it down, look it up. Idahoans against
I
Agenda
can
21.
remember that.
It's
Okay,
really
we can
bad.
do this next week.
Yeah, Patty,
Next week.
this is a.
Patty, can I ask,
reality.
what is the group that you are going to be reporting on?
Well, I like this one, Montana Forest Stewardship Foundation. But even these are all tied into a UN program, Sustainable Forestry Initiative. That's UN. And even Montana Logging Association, all the mills, they're certified to promote this stuff. That one there. And I couldn't believe it, what you gave us that stuff to look up. I found out that our own Montana Logging Association is hooked into all this.
Can I make a suggestion, quick one? I think maybe somewhere down the line, maybe first step would be to have a survey done to see what the people here in Granite County want, how do they feel our forests are being managed,
Yeah.
what they think should be corrected, or after all, we are having a discussion about what's
Okay,
happening
so-
here in Granite County.
How much money do we get from the federal government in Granite County?
For what?
I mean, how much money flows into Granite County? I'll find out.
Flows into, what do you mean? Flows
Into the county commissioners, okay, we got the Forest Service, they're probably the second biggest employers in Granite County, don't you
Yeah.
think? You would know, Chuck.
And the
Next to the
courthouse,
hospital.
and it was all government and.
Right, okay, so we have, but I'm speaking mainly of federal money. When we take all this money, the forests belong to everybody in the United States. It's bigger than Granite County. We could do a survey and everybody probably say log, 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 snowmobile, plow, trash it. They'd be all for it. It belongs to everybody. We have a responsibility to the entire United States to manage these forests and these mountains. And it's bigger than Granite County.
The national park, can I say, the national parks are one thing, okay? The land that's within the states belong to the states, okay? The
And this is wilderness,
Constitution.
and this is wilderness, yeah.
Well, even the federal government's this designation.
That's right.
I mean,
But
10 square mile, it's in the Constitution. They have regulations over 10 square miles unless it's designated a national park, and the states get involved in that. So, I'm sorry, the land in Granite County, even the wilderness, that's not designated wilderness, is still under Granite County.
right, but it belongs to everyone.
Then why doesn't the federal government pay taxes? My philosophy on that is, if the federal government paid taxes like we all do,
Right.
property taxes, then for the people of the United States, then they could have a say. But they don't pay taxes, they don't cut any timber.
They pay in lieu of taxes. And I know,
They did used to.
but they still do. That was renewed.
It was in the budget bill.
Right, and it was
But
renewed.
why do we have to go to the budget bill every 2 years or
Well-
whatever to get money from that land that should have been, they should be paying taxes on
Right,
it?
you're saying why isn't it permanent?
Hmm?
You're saying it should be
Permanent,
permanent.
yeah.
Yeah, and I would probably agree with you, but I'm just saying if this is bigger than Granite County.
But we live here.
Right.
But we're the ones that we live and
Right.
people make a living off of it. And one other thing I wanted to bring up real quick. In the Philipsburg Mail, there was an article about Fenler's Post and Pole. And it talked about where he sent post and pole material. And one was Argentina, one was Maui, and one was some other place. Across the wall. Okay, when I was in England at Stonehenge, I look over at the parking lot, those are rails. That's from the Northern Rockies someplace, okay? And I know it was. And then I heard through the grapevine that the Queen of England had bought teepee poles from a person here in the county. Is that true?
Oh, it could be because there were people, weirs that did teepee poles for years and now they're Deer Lodge, but sure.
Anyway, so here's an international market. And what's the Forest Service doing? Burning them up. Just burn it up. And you got an international market that basically is in very few places in the world. Because it takes, like 80, 100 years to grow those good rails and in a real thick stand. And and they're real nice and so, one was steeplechase jumps in someplace. Yeah, I mean, that's great, but the Forest Service just burns them up.
Well, I think you're making a generalization there, but the post and polars, I think, do a wonderful job. I've never heard of them being shut out, but maybe I'm wrong on that.
Oh, sure they are.
Are they?
Sure.
Post and polars
I
are
mean,
shut out?
some of these fires, they just lit it, and they didn't care if it was poles and poles, the material or what. I mean, they didn't care. Those people from other places, like California, Arizona, whatever, they have no care for this land, our land, the one we live by.
Well, we're never gonna agree on that.
Okay, move on. I think any other new business, I think we pretty much covered that. And next meeting agenda items.
Becky is so involved. She, by giving us the agenda early, she enabled me to put on the collaborative groups. And I think that works really well.
Okay.
I really appreciated getting the agenda.
Right, like a week or so prior,
Okay.
like July.
So what I currently have on the agenda is formal commissioner's resolution by Elena. Yes, is that?
Well,
Start the
is
process
supposed to be.
Okay.
Process.
Sapphire Wilderness Study Area discussion. Discuss NEPA and MEPA. Sue will report on Montana Forest Collaboration Network, and Patty will report on Montana Forest Stewardship Foundation.
Air quality can be with NEPA and MEPA.
Okay.
Is everybody ready to go?
Yeah, and I just still think that we've got to have some set down rules, and we still don't have a mission statement, and you can't really do much in an hour, so
So,
maybe we just gotta think about that somewhere down the line.
do you want us to do the mission statement or the commissioners?
We should come up with the mission statement of what we are. Does anybody know what we are? Some of them say we're doing Steve Daines's bill. Some of them say we're doing forest management. There's no statement as to who we are. I don't think you're gonna get it from the county commissioners.
How about we each come up with an idea
Let's
next
do
week
it.
and then see
Yeah.
what we come up with? Maybe
Yeah.
someone will have a good idea
We'll
what we
put
can
it-
call
yeah.
ourselves. A mission of statement,
A mission statement.
yeah,
Yeah, everybody come up with a mission statement,
and we'll choose one.
and so we'll
And
put a
if it-
mission statement on the agenda.
And if it's possible that we can go more than 2 hours or have another day. I mean, see, this is what that bothers me is they try to make it sound, they being the commissioners, that they want to leave it up to us, but everything we do has to be approved by them. And then they change things. So there's nothing set rules that we can follow.
We're just supposed to advise them. I mean, we can say at some point, and it's probably some point not too far in the future, a few meetings down the line, because Dane's bill is out there hanging. The commissioners are gonna wanna know what we think about Dane's bill. That's how this all got going. And if I'm not mistaken, it was decided to broaden our powers of, our advisory powers, to also advise the commissioners on how they should be dealing with the Forest Service, on questions of fire, on questions of harvest, maybe on questions of, whatever, forest travel plan. So it's been pretty clear in my mind, I thought that's what the commissioners wanted us to do. Talk about this stuff. Eventually, Chuck, you will say, today's the day. We're going to have some advice for the commissioners. And we'll take a vote,
Exactly.
and there'll be,
How about if we each submit a letter to the county commissioners, how we
Well,
feel?
we can do
We're
that.
getting educated here, we all
can
have
do-
our voice,
We can do that right now, though. You can write to the commissioners and to the paper,
Yeah.
and so can I. But it will mean something more
If we,
when
like
it
a jury.
comes from the, when it comes from the commission, right? And it'll be a majority vote, and I'm presuming within a couple of months. This isn't rocket science. This commission could go on for quite a while, but basically, we're all learning in every one of these meetings, and at some point, you will decide we've learned enough, okay? And it's time to advise. That's what we're supposed to do, advise the commissioners, and we will. And then if they want us to keep going, we can keep going. As far as the wilderness study area, I would just guess that'll be a one-time advisory thing, and then that's gonna either happen or not, or whatever. The question of the whole forest, that's something that's ongoing, and, you know, maybe that would be something we'd go along and you'd have, you know, members in and out, and, you know, I've talked way more than I intended to, but that's where I see us going, and I don't think it has to be overly complicated. I think mainly we're listening. I'm proud of the way everybody listens here, and we're gathering information, and at some point we'll tell the commissioners, here is, you know, and if it's a split vote, which I'm guessing it will be on whatever our recommendations are, we can pass on that it was split. You know, it doesn't have.
That's exactly why I wanted these on the agenda for several months, and then we'll make that decision.
Right. You'll know when it's time to say, all right, we've gathered enough information, maybe we're spinning our wheels a little bit, let's advise them.
But then you advise them, and then where does it go? I mean,
Well,
the commission is,
That's above our pay grade.
not as far as I'm concerned, because
Well,
I
we
see
can put
enough
it
of
in
the
the-
boards, the airport board, the cemetery board, this board. Where's the public involvement there? I mean, after they report to the county commissioners, what happens? We have no clue of what goes on.
The paper, Patty and.
Well, let's talk about the paper. What Patty should be able to put in a report, just like some of these other people are doing. And I'm looking at you, Chuck, because I've seen a number of articles from Annie Young. She writes about meetings, and I saw Dan Radish write something about a meeting, so Patty should be able to put something in too, don't you think?
Sure, anybody can put something in the paper.
As an article,
I don't see
not
why
as a
not.
letter to the.
I talked to Tom, he said I'd have to pay for it, so, or we would. But I
You have to pay
don't,
for a letter to the editor?
By margin.
no, it wouldn't be a
Marge?
letter to the editor.
Always a pleasure.
It'd be a regular article.
An
in the
article.
newspaper, like what you put in. But he said I'd have to pay, he said, why would I wanna do it if you're gonna do it?
Right.
So he said I could work with you on
Yeah,
it.
most certainly.
Yeah,
But I think it's good to have someone objective to the articles, and Scott's willing to come. That's the best outcome, I think.
Well, that's why I'm here.
Right, I thank you for coming. Do you get the commissioner, or how do you know about the meeting? Somebody coordinate?
it's hard for me, you know, to listen to everything and then have to write it out, but I would like to.
Okay.
That's why I do this, you can watch it and you can do, that's the whole point of it. Even Becky can watch it without going through this.
So, we got that covered?
Yes,
I'm ready to go.
I make a motion that the meeting be adjourned.
I'll second it. Adjourned.
All
Till I
right.
was done with school.
Thank you everyone
studying.
for all of your input and information. It was